Canada begins building its own PPE network in China, while at the same time Chinese test kits shipped around the world are being returned as they do not work. And the Canadian military told the government about the CCP virus way back in January, and CBC appears not to criticize the Chinese Communist Party. This is the Great White North Report. So according to CBC yesterday, Canada has begun to build its own personal protective equipment network in China, using its diplomats and consultants to create a made-for-Canada solution to get critical supplies from China. I think the best way to do that would be to actually start home-growing it and retooling certain factories that make masks and test kits and do it over here. I'm pretty sure you can retool a couple of factories real quick, or have some equipment shipped from 3M plants in the States to help and do it ourselves instead of relying on China. After all, China's the one that put us in this awful mess. So apparently a cargo flight touched down in Hamilton on last Saturday, bringing millions of badly needed N95 respirator masks to help in the fight against the CCP virus. Now it's the third delivery of critical supplies arriving under a made-for-Canada plan set up with the help of diplomats and consultants in China from a warehouse in Shanghai and 2 of Canada's airlines. Now, why are they doing this? Simply because the global market for these things is overwhelmed by chaos and acts of piracy. Canada needed to take some risk out of securing everything from badly needed medical masks to gowns to gloves. Now, there's a reason why this has happened, and we'll go through that. First of all, way back in January, China bulk bought medical supplies abroad before the CCP virus crisis really hit. Staff of Chinese government-backed global property giants were ordered to buy up vast quantities of Western medicines and medical equipment to send to China. And according to a company newsletter, the Greenland Group overseas office bought up 3 million protective masks, 700,000 hazmat suits, and 500,000 pairs of protective gloves from Australia, Canada, Turkey, and other countries. Also, you have what's called dai-go, of independent Chinese buyers living abroad, going from place to place, buying up all the stock of N95 masks and other things like hand sanitizers and gloves to ship back to China at a profit. So you got profiteers doing this too. Obviously, it's really bad because now I still cannot get masks and we still can't find gloves. And as soon as places like Home Depot, Home Hardware, and Canadian Tire get them, they're pretty much sold out. And the other reason is, way back in Canada gave 16 tons of medical supplies to China. And according to this Toronto Sun article, let's hope they return the favor. Now, the Chamber of Commerce was asking manufacturers if they can retool to manufacture critical medical equipment. And the federal government wants to hear from you. They need ventilators and N95 safety masks. Okay, so there are many patriotic businesses across the country now accessing their operations to see if they can rise to the occasion. That's really good. But the fact is that we gave so many medical supplies to China back in February. At the time, they were really downplaying this. It looks pretty bad in our government. And the fact that I can only find this on the Toronto Sun and other websites and not on the CBC news site makes me wonder if the CBC stands for the Chinese Broadcasting Center. According to Breitbart, Canada gave away medical equipment to China before facing shortages. This article, March 25th, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's response to the Wuhan virus is one reason Canada finds itself short of vital medical supplies, is that they shipped a great deal of it to China in the last days before the Communist Party's secrecy and duplicity unleashed this pandemic upon the world. And they also mentioned 16 tons of medical supplies. Now, medical supplies from China arrived in Edmonton as well last weekend. So Canada has been importing more and more from China to meet the demands. This one was carrying 80,000 pounds of medical supplies from China. And this one's bringing masks and other protective equipment for medical workers in Alberta and across Canada. Now, I'm really worried about this because over the past month, other countries have done this. Now I'm worried because at this time, China's been supplying faulty CCP virus test kits to places like Spain, the Czech Republic, and Turkey. And according to the National Review, up to 80% of the 150,000 portable quick CCP virus test kits China delivered to the Czech Republic were faulty. And the Czechs, they paid $546,000 US for 100,000 test kits. So they paid $500,000 for these things that don't work. The Daily Caller also mentions the same things. The Spanish government purchased 340,000 test kits, and it's not like they're giving it to us, we're buying it from them. So nothing comes for free. The Netherlands, they recalled around 600,000 Chinese masks out of a shipment of 1.3 million. That's a half, 50%, as they failed to meet quality standards. According to Newsweek, more reliable source, millions of CCP virus test kits bought from China are unreliable for most patients. And yet here we are, Canada is actually buying this kind of stuff from the CCP. So there is a trend here of unreliability on the part of the CCP. Now, according to CBC, the Canadian Military Intelligence Unit issued a warning about the Wuhan outbreak way back in January. It raises the questions of what the government knew and when. It just seems like the Canadian government took the Chinese numbers and information at face value. And the Communist Party of China will never tell you the truth of what's really going on. They don't want to show weakness in the face of adversity. And the CCP virus definitely showed that. But that's no surprise that the Canadian military will tell the government something and nothing will happen for years, and it'll take so long until it's in our face. For example, the amount of time it took us to replace the Sea King helicopters. That was 30 years in the making. Or the Canadian warship replacement plan to use. We're still using frigates from the 1990s. And we also have submarines that were from the 1980s and as well. Not to mention a garbage waste dispute from 6 years ago that wasn't resolved until last summer between Canada and the Philippines. We almost went to war over the Philippines over this. So this is why the Canadian government has not been really good at. What I find really interesting is that CBC is not covering all the issues when it comes to the CCP virus, and that they're putting China in a more positive light. In fact, I've yet to see a major Canadian news outlet actually call out China on this issue. And I think Canadians should be really pissed off that seem to be licking China's bum over this when they're the ones that started this whole mess. I'd like to see a little more criticism coming from our major news outlets. Like I said, the CBC stands for the Chinese Broadcasting Center. So anyway, that's all I have for today on this one. Any Canadians listening out there, let me know what you think in the comment section. Till next time, I'm Roman Daisel. I'm out of here.